All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into global information systems management. And, it's kind of like the engine under the hood of global business.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that a lot of people don't think about.
Right.
But it's really fascinating when you start to peel back the layers
It is.
and see how companies are using technology to compete and win on a global scale.
Yeah. And you know what? I think a lot of our listeners are going to find this really relevant because whether they work for a multinational company themselves or they're just fascinated by how brands adapt across the world.
Absolutely.
This is stuff that, is really impacting all of us.
And I think one of the key things to understand is this idea of alignment.
Okay, alignment.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Break that down for me. What are we talking about when we say alignment?
In the simplest terms, alignment means making sure that your technology strategy is fully supporting your overall business goals. So it's not just about having the latest and greatest tech. It's about making sure that tech is actually helping you achieve what you're trying to do as a business.
Yeah. It sounds so obvious when you put it like that.
It does.
But I have a feeling that a lot of companies actually struggle with this.
Oh, they do. And there are so many reasons for that.
So what are some of the biggest roadblocks that companies hit when they're trying to get this alignment right?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is just the constant influx of new technology.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, companies are under pressure to constantly adapt,
Yeah.
integrate new systems,
Right.
all while trying to manage their existing infrastructure.
Yeah. And let's not forget about those legacy systems.
Oh, gosh, yes.
The ones that are like ancient but somehow still mission critical.
Absolutely. And trying to make those work with all the shiny new stuff,
Yeah.
that can be a real nightmare.
It's got to be. And then on top of all that, you've got the question of outsourcing.
Yes.
Companies like to figure out which IT tasks are safe to hand off to external providers.
Right.
Which ones they need to keep in-house. And I'm sure getting that balance wrong.
Huge consequences.
Yeah.
Huge consequences.
So, okay, clearly a lot of potential pitfalls.
Right.
And that's where these 15 best practices come in.
Yes.
From our source material. And, they're supposed to be kind of like this roadmap to successful IT alignment.
Exactly. They provide a framework for companies to evaluate their IT strategy and make sure it's in sync with their business goals.
Okay, so the source material breaks these practices down into 4 main categories.
It does.
Can you walk me through those?
Sure. So the first category is called providing direction.
Okay.
And it might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised how many companies just dive into IT initiatives without a clear roadmap or a plan in place.
Oh, I'm sure.
This category really emphasizes the importance of having a well-defined IT strategy.
Right.
Complete with information systems, plans, governance plans, all of that.
So it's not just about the tech itself.
No.
It's about the overall game plan for using it.
Yeah, exactly. The second category is establishing the IT organization.
Right.
And this is all about structuring your IT team for success.
Oh.
It covers things like finding and keeping top talent, creating a culture of innovation, and making sure your team has the resources they need to actually thrive.
So investing in the liveware, as the source material calls it.
Yes.
I love that term.
Liveware.
Yeah, because it's easy to forget that technology is only as good as the people behind it.
Absolutely. Now, the third category is managing IT development.
Okay.
And this focuses on running IT projects effectively.
Right.
Especially in a global context.
Right, because that adds a whole other layer of complexity.
It does. It involves things like careful project management,
Yeah.
risk assessment,
Mm.
and ensuring smooth integration with existing systems.
Which I'm imagining can be really tricky when you're dealing with different countries
That is tricky.
and time zones and all of that.
Absolutely. And then lastly, we have delivering ongoing operations,
Okay.
which is about keeping everything running smoothly on a day-to-day basis.
Keep the lights on, essentially.
Yeah, keeping the lights on, ensuring system maintenance, top-notch security, and providing excellent user support.
Makes sense. So, we can't go through all 15 practices in detail, but I am curious about a few that stood out to me in the source material.
Oh, yeah.
For example, practice 3 talks about navigating the 4 domains of IT value.
Yes.
What are those exactly, and why should companies care?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The 4 domains are strategic, IT capability, useful IT, and hype.
Okay.
Now, strategic IT, this is all about technology that directly contributes to a company's strategic goals.
Got it. So that's the high impact stuff.
The high impact stuff, the game changer.
Right. What about IT capability?
IT capability refers to technology that provides solutions to specific business needs.
Okay.
So it's essential for day-to-day operations, but it might not be driving major strategic shifts.
Okay, so it's the workhorse, but maybe not the star of the show.
Exactly.
All right, and then there's useful IT.
Useful IT.
Which sounds pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, pretty self-explanatory.
Keeping the lights on.
Keeping the lights on, the maintenance and upkeep of existing systems, crucial, but not particularly innovative or exciting.
All right, and finally we have hype. And I have a feeling this is the domain that can lead companies down some expensive rabbit holes.
It absolutely can. This is the bleeding edge, the over-marketed tech that promises the world, but often fails to deliver real value.
Oh, yeah.
Think about some of those flashy new gadgets or software that fizzled out so quickly that's often hype in action.
Yeah, for sure. So how can companies avoid falling into that hype trap?
Well, the source material suggests a few strategies. One is to carefully analyze the potential return on investment.
Yeah.
Before jumping on any new technology bandwagon.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, does this truly align with our strategic goals?
Right.
Or are we just chasing the latest trend?
That's a great point. It's so easy to get caught up in that cycle.
It is.
Without really thinking through the long-term implications.
Now, another important point that the source material highlights is the need to differentiate between mature and immature IT tasks when it comes to outsourcing.
Okay.
That's practice 7.
What's the distinction there?
Well, a mature IT task is something that you understand inside and out.
Okay.
You can write a detailed contract,
Yeah.
set clear expectations, and monitor the provider effectively.
All right.
Think of things like basic infrastructure management
Got it.
or routine software updates.
So what makes an IT task immature then?
An immature task is one that's still evolving
Okay.
with unclear requirements or metrics for success.
I see.
So it might be cutting-edge technology that you haven't fully integrated into your own operations yet.
Okay. So essentially don't outsource what you don't understand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's one more practice I wanted to touch on,
Sure.
which is practice 11.
Okay.
This one focuses on building high-performing teams
Yes.
to manage core IT capabilities.
Yes.
Why is this so important?
Because at the end of the day, even the most brilliant IT strategy is only as good as the people executing it.
Mm-hmm.
This practice emphasizes the importance of having the right skills,
Yeah.
of course, but
Yeah.
also the right motivation
Yeah.
and cultural fit within your team.
So you're saying technical skills aren't enough?
They're not enough.
Yeah.
You need people who are not only technically proficient,
Mm-hmm.
but also able to collaborate, effectively communicate clearly, and adapt to change.
So it's like building this dream team of IT all-stars.
Yeah, it really is.
That's the key.
It's a crucial piece of the puzzle, and it brings us to a really key question. How does all this play out on a global scale?
All right.
We've talked about IT alignment in general,
Mhm.
but when you're managing systems across different countries and cultures and regulations, things get a whole lot more complex.
That's a great point. It's like taking everything we've discussed and multiplying it by a factor of 10.
Absolutely.
So that's where this concept of global IP architecture comes in, which is kind of like the blueprint for a company's global information systems.
Exactly.
So let's unpack that a little bit. What exactly is global IT architecture, and why is it so crucial for companies that are operating on a global scale?
Okay, so global IT architecture is essentially the master plan
Mm-hmm.
for how a company organizes and manages its information systems across the globe.
Mhm.
So we're talking about, finding that sweet spot between standardization.
Yeah.
So creating consistent processes and systems worldwide, and then flexibility, being able to adapt to the unique needs of different regions and markets.
That makes sense. So you want that global reach, but you also need to be able to respond to local conditions.
Exactly. And it's a tough balancing act.
It is. So how do companies actually go about creating this balance?
Right.
Our source material mentions these 4 different approaches, multinational, international, transnational, and global.
Yes, and they each have their pros and cons.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a one-size-fits-all kind of situation.
Not at all. So let's start with the multinational approach. This one really prioritizes flexibility.
Yeah.
It gives each business unit a lot of autonomy in choosing and managing its own IT systems.
So it's kind of like a decentralized model.
Yeah, like a decentralized model where each region gets to call the shots for its own tech stack.
Exactly. Can you give me an example of a company that might use this model effectively?
Sure. Think about a company like Nestle
Okay.
with its massive global presence and that incredibly diverse product portfolio.
Right.
A single standardized system for everything from, manufacturing to inventory management might just not work across all of their different businesses and markets.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how that would be appealing, especially for companies with a strong local focus.
Right.
But wouldn't this approach lead to some challenges with data sharing and integration?
Oh, it absolutely can. Imagine trying to get a consolidated view of, sales data or inventory levels across dozens of different independently managed systems.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for data silos, reporting nightmares, and just real difficulty in making strategic decisions based on a global picture.
Ouch, that does not sound fun.
No.
So how does the international approach differ?
So the international approach leans more towards central control.
Okay.
So the parent company's knowledge and IT infrastructure are kind of leveraged by subsidiaries around the world.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some regional support structures in place, but the core systems and decision-making tend to be more centralized.
Okay, so a bit more top-down than the multinational approach.
A little more top-down. Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I think a company like IBM,
Yeah.
which has, a long history of operating globally and a strong established IT infrastructure.
Absolutely.
They might have, a global ERP system that's used by all their subsidiaries,
Right.
but they could also allow for some level of customization at the regional level to meet specific local requirements.
Exactly, and that's the balance they're trying to strike.
Yeah, it sounds like a reasonable compromise.
It does, but it's not without its potential drawbacks. One of the biggest challenges is the risk of becoming too slow and bureaucratic. If every decision about local IT adaptations has to go through layers of corporate approval,
Right.
it can really stifle innovation.
And make it tough to adapt.
Yeah, and make it difficult to respond quickly to changing market conditions.
So finding that sweet spot between control and agility is key.
It really is.
Now, what about the transnational approach?
Yes,
This one seems like the most ambitious,
it is ambitious.
aiming for both standardization and flexibility on a global scale.
It is, and it's becoming increasingly popular as companies try to navigate the complexities of the global marketplace.
I bet.
A good example of a company that does this well, I think, is Toyota.
Okay.
They have standardized production processes and systems worldwide,
Mm-hmm.
but they also allow for a degree of localization in terms of car features and designs to appeal to different regional tastes.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
So it's about having that core set of global standards while still empowering local teams to make adjustments based on their specific market knowledge.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
Requires a high degree of coordination and collaboration between headquarters and the regional offices.
Mm.
You need strong leadership, clear governance structures, and a culture that embraces both global standards and local responsiveness.
It sounds complex,
It is.
but potentially very powerful if you can get it right.
It can be.
Okay, lastly, we have the global approach, which sounds like it's all about standardization and efficiency on a global scale.
This one is often favored by companies that have a very standardized product or service that they offer worldwide.
Okay.
So think of companies like McDonald's or Coca-Cola.
Right.
Consistency is key to their brand identity.
Makes sense. You want a Big Mac to taste the same,
Right.
whether you're in New York or Tokyo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In this model, the focus is on creating that one-size-fits-all IT system
Mm-hmm.
that can be rolled out globally with minimal variation.
Mm.
It can be very efficient and cost-effective,
Yeah.
but it can also be inflexible and resistant to change.
Yeah. I can see that what happens when you encounter a local regulation or a shift in customer preferences that requires you to modify your product or service.
That's the challenge with a fully globalized approach. Making changes can be slow and cumbersome because any modifications need to be implemented across that entire global system.
Right.
It can make it really difficult to adapt quickly to dynamic market conditions or address those regional nuances.
So it seems like each of these approaches has its own trade-offs.
It does.
There's no single right answer, is there?
Not at all. Choosing the right approach is a strategic decision that depends on a wide range of factors, including a company's industry business strategy, organizational structure, and global footprint.
Yeah, it's about understanding your own company's unique needs
Absolutely.
and finding the approach that best aligns with those needs.
Right.
Now, in the real world, do companies actually stick to just one of these approaches?
That's a great question.
Or do they tend to blend elements from different models?
The reality is that many companies adopt what we call a hybrid model. They might have a globally standardized IT infrastructure, but allow for more local flexibility in terms of applications, user interfaces, or even specific modules within a larger system.
So they can kind of cherry pick the best aspects of each approach and tailor them to their own circumstances.
Precisely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution in global information systems management. It's about carefully evaluating the trade-offs, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each approach, and then making informed decisions based on your company's strategic goals, global footprint, and organizational culture.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about the importance of IT alignment,
Right?
the 15 best practices for achieving it,
Yes.
and these 4 approaches to global IT architecture.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap things up,
Mm-hmm.
I want to shift gears a bit and look towards the future.
Okay.
What trends are you seeing that might shape the future of global information systems management? What should our listeners be paying attention to?
Oh, there are some really exciting developments on the horizon. I think the one that's already having a huge impact is cloud computing.
Yeah, cloud computing, it's been around for a while now, but it seems like its role in global IT is just getting bigger and bigger.
It really is. It offers companies this incredible flexibility and scalability. They can access computing resources on demand without having to invest heavily in their own physical infrastructure.
Right. It's like having a virtual IT department that can scale up or down as needed.
Exactly. No more waiting months for hardware to be delivered and installed.
Right. And it's not just about speed and convenience either.
No, not at all. Cloud computing can also be significantly more cost-effective than traditional on-premise infrastructure.
Oh, I bet how so.
Well, companies can pay for only the resources they use.
Oh, okay.
So they avoid those big upfront capital expenditures and the ongoing maintenance costs associated with owning and managing their own hardware.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for companies with fluctuating demand or those that are rapidly expanding into new markets.
Absolutely. Cloud computing is also making it easier for companies to adopt that hybrid approach to global IT architecture that we were talking about earlier.
Oh, right. So they can kind of mix and match.
Exactly.
Take advantage of the best of both worlds.
Exactly. Keep some systems on-premise, move others to the cloud, and create a really flexible and adaptable IT environment.
Cool. So what other trends are you seeing out there?
One other major trend is the growing use of artificial intelligence, or AI and machine learning.
AI, it seems like we hear about AI everywhere these days, but I'm curious to know how it's being applied in this specific context of global IT.
Yeah, well, for starters, AI is being used to automate a wide range of IT tasks,
Okay.
which frees up human IT professionals to focus on more strategic initiatives. Think about things like system monitoring, routine maintenance, even basic troubleshooting. AI-powered tools can handle many of these tasks automatically, often more efficiently and accurately than humans.
It's like having a virtual IT assistant that's always on, constantly monitoring systems and flagging potential issues before they even become big problems.
Exactly. But AI's capabilities go way beyond automation. It's also being used to analyze vast amounts of data, identify patterns, and make predictions that can help companies optimize their IT operations.
Oh, wow. Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. So AI can be used to forecast demand for computing resources, allowing companies to proactively scale their cloud infrastructure to meet anticipated needs.
So instead of reacting to problems after they occur,
Yeah.
they can use AI to anticipate and prevent them altogether.
Exactly. And this ability to analyze data and identify patterns can also be applied to cybersecurity, which is, a huge concern.
Yeah, it seems like we hear about a new data breach or cyber attack almost every day.
All the time. And the threats are becoming more sophisticated all the time. So AI can play a really crucial role in detecting and responding to these threats.
So how does that work?
Well, AI-powered cybersecurity tools can analyze network traffic, identify anomalies, and flag potential intrusions in real time, often before human security analysts would even notice them.
It's like having this AI guardian constantly watching over your systems looking for any signs of trouble.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool in the fight against cybercrime. But it's important to remember that technology alone isn't enough.
Right.
Companies also need to have strong security policies and procedures in place, as well as a culture of security awareness among their employees.
So it's a holistic approach.
Exactly. It's technology, people, and processes all working together.
That makes sense. Now, before we wrap up, I want to ask you a kind of big picture question. Why should the average person care about any of this? It might seem like all this technical jargon is only relevant to IT professionals, but the reality is that global information systems management has a profound impact on all of us.
It does. Think about how you shop, how you communicate, how you access information, how you travel. Almost every aspect of our lives is touched by IT in some way. And the way companies manage their IT systems has a direct impact on our experiences as customers, employees, and citizens.
So it's not just an IT problem.
No.
It's something that affects all of us.
It affects all of us. And as IT systems become even more complex and interconnected, the stakes just get higher.
Yeah, for sure.
It's essential for companies to embrace those best practices, adopt innovative technologies, and really prioritize cybersecurity to ensure that these systems are reliable and secure and beneficial for everyone.
This has been a fascinating look into the world of global IT management. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope you've learned something new and gained a deeper understanding of this really critical but often overlooked aspect of our digital world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.